Everything in this world is a program, because the world in itself is a program. Everything that exists is a program, and everything that we see and perceive is seen and perceived through a program, namely through the human program and through the program of perception itself. So when we see something through a program. And that program is the human program, the program of perception, you could say. And everything that exists is a manifestation of something that is a program. If the code, if the program was not there, then it couldn't exist. A reptile, a plant, a mushroom, a bacteria, even a molecule exists because there's a code somewhere. There's a program that gives manifestation to this natural phenomenon. So everything that exists is a program. Even consciousness is a program, or is constituted by a program. And because it is constituted by a program, that is enough to make us more aware of this. But what is it in this world that is not a program? The only thing that this world has, the only thing in this world that is not a program, is that which the program stands on, which means that which makes perception possible, that which makes space possible as space, as spaciousness, namely the ultimate absolute, the unborn, so to speak, because it is eternal. It has never, it never did come into being, and it can never pass away. It has never been created, so it can never die. It simply does not exist, and that which does not exist has to exist. It is the layer. That which does not exist is the layer and the arena and the platform on which everything else exists. If this layer, if this platform of complete voidness and eternal nothingness was not there, then there would be no possibility for space to be spaciousness. It would be no possibility for the universe to come into being in space, because space has to be given permission to be space. It has to be given the ability to become space, and the only thing that can give space the ability to become space as spaciousness is the ultimate absolute. It's the layer of invisible space that gives space its ability and possibility to become what it is, namely spaciousness. The space that we see is not the primary space. The space that we see is a secondary space. The space that we see is the space that is produced by the human program, of course, because we see it and perceive it through our human program. So what we see is created by the program that creates our perception. But that which our perception stands on, the ultimate absolute, that is prior to perception, that is that which gives perception its possibility for existence. That is the eternal, the unborn, the Parabrahman state, the stateless state, which is the jewel in the crown. It's the hidden secret in this world. And it is very important to talk about this because the whole world is lost in programs. The diagnosis of the human being in modern day society is this: lost in programs. This is our diagnosis. We are lost in programs. We are lost in the things that we perceive through our consciousness. We are lost in the language games and in the discourses and in the identification process with discourses and language games and with representations of that which we think is the self, the human self, or the world, or anything, simply a mirage, something that we constitute and create through the program that is already produced by another program, because the human program is of course produced by another program. The human program is produced by genes and DNA, and the machine of genes and DNA is produced by another program, which is enzymes and proteins and photons and neurons and electromagnetic energy. So everything that we perceive is a program. Even God, in some sense, is a program in our own mind, of course, because God is simply just a projection. God must be something much deeper than only a mind product. God must be an experiential awareness of that which is the ultimate absolute. At least I see it like that, because I can clearly see that there's something wrong with the God of most religions. If because most religions, what is it that they can do? Well, they can make people crazy, and they can make people into killers and violators of every kind. Some people get peaceful and they become true, wonderful, lovely human beings through religion, because they get self-realization through it. And they calm down, their nervous system is regulated, they get what they want from the Lord, so to speak, or from the divine presence that they connect with and merge with it. And so the brain and the nervous system gets regulated and oiled like a machine through this oil, so to speak, through this sacred divine lotion of that which we call the divine essence. But so many gurus of today, talk about Kali Yuga, and the world is going to end because now we're in Kali Yuga, but the next step will be the Sat Yuga, and things like that. And there are many lovely gurus that is extremely intelligent and wonderful. And he is a person, I call him a person, not a guru, but he is a person that is really interested in the realization of the absolute, he's completely interested in the realization of the ultimate absolute, but he's completely stuck in programs, he's stuck in the cartoons, so he's a cartoonist. And many gurus are cartoonists. They are giving out, they are serving cartoons to the people, to the disciples, It's a cartoon, it's just a program, because the mind product is a program, the mind product is a cartoon. If you're interested in the ultimate absolute, then you have to see the unborn eternal reality below and inside and outside too. Everything that exists, Anything and everything exists within the ultimate absolute, and it stands on the ultimate absolute. Other gurus talk about the background awareness. Well, you are the background awareness. You are the true self, and the true self is the background awareness. This is also just a program. It's a product that this guru has gotten from Nisargadatta Maharaj, but is not strong enough or authentic enough in his cognition to understand that this is not it. Nisargadatta Maharaj is asking you to throw away that fucking awareness, If you want to come to the ultimate absolute, then you have to throw away all this bullshit that you're giving your brain. Because your brain, your true brain, doesn't want the cartoon. Your true cognition doesn't want any more programs and cartoons. They don't want the oil, they don't want the lotion, they want the ultimate absolute. We, as human spirits, we need the ultimate absolute. We need authentic knowledge. So forget about that awareness shit. Forget about the consciousness bullshit. And forget, please, about the Sat Chit Ananda. Sat Chit Ananda, or even the Brahman and the Atman is a program. Sat Chit Ananda is a word, is a term that's supposed to express the bliss in the most fine aspect of pure consciousness from its source. Even that is a program. If you don't understand that, then you shouldn't be concerned with the ultimate absolute. You shouldn't be there, you know. If you belong in a supermarket, you belong in a supermarket. And most gurus of today belongs in a supermarket, because all they can do is to be parasites on other gurus and try to establish themselves as gurus through second-hand knowledge, through knowledge that they get from other people. But if you really want the ultimate absolute, you have to go all the way by yourself. You have to throw away everything of that which is a program in you in order to realize the ultimate absolute. And then you will get clear, then you will get clarity, you will get insight, and you can have realization of that which is the relationship between that which is prior to programs and that which simply just is a program or a manifestation of a program or a representation of a program. And we get addicted, the human being get addicted very easily to programs, to that which programs represents. We get addicted to all of this because we get addicted to consciousness, we get addicted to our own experience and perception of our own psychological self. We get addicted to all kinds of stories, we get addicted to all kinds of cartoons, we get addicted to knowledge, we get addicted to, of course, to the more coarse things like shopping and sex and love and blah blah, you know. But if you really want to go into the bottom of the mountain, if you really want to see God in its most original form, before God became an angel with 14 wings and 13 suns and all of this, if you want to go there, then you have to be able to get rid of all the programs. You have to be able to see what is a program, what is a language game, what is a representation of thought and language, what is discourse, what is a human product. And as I said, the human being suffers from this. We suffer from living in programs. Mental illness is a program. And it becomes a program, no, it becomes an illness because we can't get out of the program, you know. It's impossible to get out of the chronic stress when we are identified with the programs themselves. But it's not impossible to get out of chronic stress. You just have to deconstruct your own relationship to any program whatsoever. You have to release yourself from experience. You have to unblend from consciousness, you could say. You have to unblend from all the different parts of your psychological and emotional makeup, your whole human history that is particular to your individual existence. And then also you have to unblend from the different parts that constitutes the human program. When you do that, you will see the absolute, the ultimate absolute. And people don't like this because people cling to the programs. People are able to kill people like me, you know, for saying things like this, because they protect the programs with every possible force, with every possible instrumental technology or attack or strategy, you know. Political propaganda, religious propaganda, and nationalistic propaganda, and ideology propaganda is of course very obvious. But there are more subtle forms of propaganda. The way that we want to control each other, you know, we need to control each other by our own propaganda, because we believe that if I am like this, I can get a certain result. If I do like that, I can get that. If I'm like this, I can get that. But in order to see God, in order to come to our home, in order to come to the ultimate absolute, in order to be that which the whole world actually is, because it is that which the whole world stands on. It's the origination of this world. It's the place where everything that comes into being arises from. So when we see that, it's a completely different ballgame, and this is why science is so dreadfully boring, in these days. Stephen Hawking has said one enlightened thing in my mind in his life when he said that philosophy is dead, which of course is true. And he was not among the worst, but there are so many horrible, boring scientists. All of these people who have a lot of knowledge and great intellects, but they simply cannot get out of the program. They cannot get out of the discourse. They cannot get out of that which they suffer from, namely the delusion of the discourse. They cannot get out of the language game. They cannot get out of the solar system of cognition, and you have to get out of that, because science has already proved by the uncertainty principle that every time you measure something, you don't measure it, you create it. When you measure something, you create it, or you modify the existence of that which you measure. So this is simply just a rule. The human program will create the result. The human program will modify the result, or create the result, or at least present the result in a way that is not analog or parallel or identical with the natural product itself, which we actually cannot perceive through the human program. So there is an inability that we have to accept. We have to accept that the true nature of the programs we cannot know, because we are seeing the programs already from a programmed state. We are seeing it from the program itself. So we cannot know the truth of the world simply because we are the world. We are coming from the human program. We are measuring and seeing and analyzing programs from the perspective of an already created program. So this is why we cannot do that. But we can understand that it is a program. We can see that, of course, it's a program. A tree is a program. A plant is a program. A fish is a program. A shoe is a program. If there was no code, if there was no program hidden in the shoe, then the shoe could not become a shoe. Same with the molecule. There's a certain codes and programs in there. Which also brings me, just give a comment on AI. People are so afraid that AI will become the new consciousness. And even the best engineers of AI are very afraid of the consciousness that comes from AI. But the consciousness that exists in AI are currently codes. They are programs, same as in a computer. It's just coding. They are coded machines. It's not consciousness, it's a code, it's a program. But it displays itself as consciousness. Wow, this robot has to be conscious because it responds in a human way. Well, why does it respond in a human way? Because of the code that is written into it. If the code that was written into the AI machine, into the robot would not respond as a human. We would not think that we would not see the delusion of consciousness, or we would not see that which we interpret as consciousness. Simply because if the code was not there, then the machine couldn't do anything. The reason why a computer works is because it's a bundle of codes. It's a totality program of a million different programs that are written in code into the machine. And that's why it works, because electricity is that which fuels these programs. And that's also the case with AI. That's also the case with robots. They are codes and programs, but we think they are conscious because they are executing the codes that we have written into them. They're just doing their job. But we think that, oh, you're really conscious. This is a real woman. This is a real man. But it's actually a code that is expressing itself. Whether consciousness can occur or not in these machines, we don't know. And as I've said before, we actually cannot completely know it because of the uncertainty principle, or because the fact that when we measure things in a way that creates the result or modifies the result, simply because we're coming from the human program. So there's always an interpretation or a distortion because of the program through which we perceive the world. So this is a long argument for the ultimate absolute. This is a long argument for seeing how we can suffer from the programs. This is a long argument for seeing that even consciousness is a program. This is a long argument for seeing that every language game that we perceive, and we can say that the world is a language game, because it's a code, it's a program, and every code is a language game, or every language game is a code, more precisely. Every language game is a code. So a discourse consists of 1 million language games intertwined, and it becomes a discourse. It becomes a way of thinking. It becomes an approach, whether it's a scientific approach, a philosophical approach, or anything whatsoever. But all these scientists who are now creating podcast after podcast, and Jordan Peterson and all these, who's practically incompetent when it comes to psychology. Well, let's say that he has 30% of insight when it comes to psychology. 30%, yeah. But that's not enough. We need more than that. We need more substantial knowledge. We need more clever people. And we need, before we make people famous, we need to know that there's a reason why we make them famous. We are going to make them authorities or famous people or whatever, or leaders of a certain field or whatever, simply because they have true insight about something. They have something to give to the world, something more profound than make up your bed in the morning, But if you want to stand up straight and talk in Ephesus in your wonderful tailored suit, and everything's hunky-dory and wonderful and the best of the best, then the least you could do is to offer the world some true insight. The least you could do is to give something to the population of this world. The least you could do is to manifest in intellect and intelligence, not just be angry and neurotic because you're suffering from your own code, which you cannot see. You're suffering from the code that is disturbing your system. The way to release your code is the way to gain self-insight. And if you don't release your code, if you don't deconstruct your code, if you don't realize your code and see it and let it come out in all its different constituent parts, then you cannot see your code, and you cannot heal that which makes you neurotic. You cannot see that which makes you a result of programs that are working from behind the curtain, that you don't see yourself. So in order to become enlightened, in order to see things, we have to accept true insight and knowledge, and we have to say that true insight and knowledge has value, and we have to forget about, today scientists in podcast, we should say that, who was it, Seinfeld, who had coffee in cars, right? Famous people drinking coffee in cars, yes. Now we have scientists in podcasts, the big fashion today is scientists in podcasts, closer to truth, and they are very nice attempts, honorable, honest attempts of getting insight and knowledge. And the guests that they invite are people who are clever in discourse. They are clever to talk about the discourse that they have understood. But that's it. That's all. One of the few philosophers that has some teeth when it comes to this is, I think, maybe John Searle. A place like Santa Fe Institute, which could be a heaven for science, it could be true a scientific arena, is also mediocre, simply because of the programs that people get addicted to. And discourse is addictive. And the Santa Fe Institute should be a heaven for scientific insight, understanding, research, and experiment. The Santa Fe Institute is a perfect place for mankind to deliver the best of the best when it comes to intellect. You know, the World Senate should have weekly meetings in the Santa Fe Institute. But it must have better people. It must have better management. It must have more clever leaders. The people who are invited must be more clever. It must be more higher level of everything, you know. If all of this, if the scientists of today just remain scientists in podcasts, drinking coffee in cars and chatting from their discourses, because it will give them more views and clicks on Twitter and on Facebook and on other social media, that's not enough. And another thing that we must also actually accept is that YouTube is the gold of the century. YouTube is the gold of the century. YouTube is the town square. Twitter is not a town square, same as Elon Musk says. Twitter is not a town square. Twitter is a twat. You know? Twitter is a twat. But YouTube is the town square. This is the place where we really can give knowledge to the world. YouTube is the arena. YouTube is the agora. YouTube is the town square. YouTube is the public town square of the world. YouTube is the diamond of the 21st century. You cannot get anything better than YouTube in this world. YouTube is absolutely the best thing that has have happened to modern society, because we can give everything. We can present things to the world in this town square. And that's wonderful. YouTube is the diamond of today and of the 21st century, really. And Twitter is a twat. Twitter is a twat, I tell you. MIT is a nitwit who's trying to grow out of being a twat. And the way to do that is simply to understand language, thought, and I mean, go deeper into, if you go into the original point of Noam Chomsky, the origination of the ability, of the human ability for language, I mean, the immanent and latent ability for organizing the world cognitively through language and semantics, you know, the linguistic talent in the brainstem of the human being, you know, that we have. Every animal, so to speak, or perhaps only the human being has a talent for language, and thus the world has become language. But anyway, MIT should also be a center for places who really do deep research on things like this. You know, we need the deepest kind of brain science that we can get. We need the deepest kind of neuroscience that we can get, and this is the future. The deepest possible neuroscience that it's possible to approach and get some results from. It is the science of the future, you know, and because AI and Neuralink and all of these things are, and bless Elon Musk for Neuralink and all these things. I mean, the Boring Company and the Hyperloop and all these things are, I mean, extremely important. Extremely important. The only two things that are not important is going to Mars and building a colony on Mars, and Twitter, because Twitter is a twat and Mars is a fruitcake. Okay. Or at least it's a project that will not yield good interest, to say it in a financial way. But anyway, this was a huge rant, or a huge philosophical, scientific, spiritual research treatise that is meant to ignite further research and thinking by our own selves. Don't let the woke and cancel culture scare us completely off the rails, because we have to allow ourselves some criticism. We have to allow ourselves our ability to think and to say things, even though it's getting more and more dangerous by the day to be outspoken in this world. And that is, of course, the deepest tragedy of the modern day world, that it's simply just no free speech anymore. And we all know how dangerous it can be in certain regions of the world, and actually everywhere in this world, because free speech is not something that exists anymore, if it has ever existed. But when we see that language is just a discourse, and whatever we say of other people is simply just a projection that comes from the machine that is in operation within our own mind-brain system, then it's not too serious, because we can take responsibility for that which is just thought and language, and for that which is just projections based on interpretation. And interpretation and projection come into being because of the programs that constitutes our ability to have an interpretation machine and a projection machine inside our mind-brain system. Thank you. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope I will not be cancelled out because of this little approach to free thought and free speech. Thank you very much.